Welcome to Sayers and Secrets. Tonight's mystery unfolds not in darkness, but in the calm precision of reason, until a single, misplaced gesture disturbs the balance. Draw nearer, listen closely, and let deduction find its voice. It started with the sound of Fritz sneezing in the kitchen and the smell of chives frying in butter. I was half listening for the mail while Wolfe was dictating a letter to a plant dealer about a batch of diseased orchids, the sort of thrilling correspondence that keeps civilization from collapsing. My pen was just about to skid off the page when the bell buzzed once, sharp, quick, and uninvited. I looked up. Wolfe didn't. He finished the word "Philostakis" with the same care most men reserve for signing a treaty. Then he said, "Archie." "Someone loves you," I told him, pushing my chair back. "Confound them," he said. "If it's Kramer, inform him that my conscience and my digestion are both occupied." The bell rang again, this time longer. Whoever was out there wasn't a timid caller. I crossed the hall, straightened my tie, and opened the door. She was in her 30s, dressed like a woman who'd spent more money than confidence on her wardrobe. The hat brim trembled slightly when she spoke. "Is this the residence of Mr. Nero Wolfe?" "It is," I said. "And I'm the butler, valet, and secretary rolled into one low-paid package. Come in." She stepped inside, clutching a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. Her gloves were still damp, and her perfume carried enough gardenia to declare war on Fritz's cooking. I shut the door behind her and gestured toward the office. When I announced her, Wolfe grunted, which was the closest thing to enthusiasm he showed before lunch. He was sunk deep in the red chair, a globe of beer at his elbow, eyes half closed like a judge dreaming of appeal cases. "Name?" I asked her quietly. "Miss Iris Quentin," I told Wolfe. He didn't open his eyes. "State your purpose, Miss Quentin." She set the parcel on the desk. I think I've witnessed a murder." That rearranged the air faster than any thunderclap. I leaned forward. "Think you have?" "I'm not certain," she said, and unwrapped the paper. Inside was a single gardening glove, green leather, smudged dark at the cuff. "This was dropped last night in the courtyard of my building, the Garden Flats off Lexington." Wolfe opened one eye, then the other. "By whom?" "That's the trouble, Mr. Wolfe. I saw no one clearly, only a figure bending near the azaleas, and then something being dragged. When I called down from my window, the person vanished. I took the glove. The stain wasn't soil." "You tell the police?" I was frightened. "It may be nothing, but this morning the superintendent's cat brought up something from under the hedge." "What something?" I asked. She hesitated. "A man's cufflink with initials RG. The superintendent said there's no tenant with those initials." Wolfe drew a slow breath through his nose, a sure sign that the hook had caught. "Miss Quentin," he said, "why, having suppressed your alarm until this moment, have you now disturbed me?" Her voice quivered but held. "Because someone searched my apartment today. Nothing was taken, except the other glove." Wolfe shut his eyes again, which meant his brain had shifted into gear. "Archie." "Yes, sir." "Telephone Inspector Kramer. Tell him I have a lady who has misplaced a corpse, possibly under shrubbery." She gasped. "You think it is that serious?" Wolfe opened his eyes an inch. "Madam, any intrusion upon my morning constitutes seriousness." I went to the phone. Before I reached it, it rang. Once, abrupt as the earlier bell. I grabbed it. "Wolfe's office." A male voice said, "Tell Wolfe to stay out of the Garden Flats if he wants his orchids to bloom another season." And the line went dead. I turned back. "That was fast service," I said. Wolfe's brows lifted. "Indeed. Fritz, cancel lunch." Fritz called faintly from the kitchen. "But, sir—" "Cancel it," Wolfe repeated. He turned to Miss Quentin. It appears, madam, that your glove is more communicative than you. The silence after that could have curdled Fritz's hollandaise. Then Wolfe spoke again, softly. Archie, fetch the map of Lexington Avenue. There is a garden to visit. Wolfe didn't move when I reached for the map drawer. He rarely does unless geography comes to him. I spread the folded Midtown sheet across the desk. His forefinger traced blocks until it landed on Garden Flats. Archie, he said, that voice on the phone, educated? Not unless trade school counts. Male, smoker, nasal, no badge and no cab license. Then an intermediary, he murmured. Principals seldom deliver threats themselves. He turned to Miss Quentin. Describe precisely what you saw among the shrubs. Her story came out in small, careful parcels. Watering geraniums around 9:30, she'd glimpsed motion in the courtyard. A stooped figure, a glint of metal, a dull thump. She'd called out. The figure vanished. Later, she found the glove. Rain had come, washing everything but her nerves. Your apartment faces the courtyard? Wolfe asked. Yes, east wing, second floor. Across from me are the Greaves. He's a musician. She teaches painting. No other witnesses? I don't know. Everyone shut windows when the rain started. He opened his eyes fully, the equivalent of applause. And why consult me instead of the police? I was frightened. They'd call it imagination, but when I came home today, my rooms had been searched, nothing missing except the other glove. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Then someone fears discovery more than the law. Archie, note her. Address and the superintendent's name. I scribbled. Croft, according to her lease. Wolfe reached for his pad and wrote, Garden Flats Inquiry. We shall verify whether azaleas are suitable for homicide. Miss Quentin, you will return home and behave normally. If the intruder revisits, call this number immediately. She managed gratitude and perfume in one breath. When she left, I asked, You believe her? I believe that deceit and sincerity are not opposites but companions, he said. Fetch your coat. I wish the facts. 10 minutes later, I was in a cab heading east with the parcel containing the glove. The day had settled into a drizzle that polished the streets but did nothing for morale. Garden Flats turned out to be 3 limestone boxes wrapped around a courtyard the size of Wolfe's dining room. An iron gate separated respectability from mildew. The superintendent met me at the entrance, thick-necked, wary, shirt open to the climate. You the insurance man? Close enough, I said. Mind unlocking the yard? He hesitated, then swung the gate. The hedge was wet, soil turned, and something metallic poked from under a root. I crouched. A trowel. Fixing drains? Yep, he said too quickly. Rain backs up. Drainage work with evening hours? I asked. Or was that you gardening last night? He scowled. Lady in 2Z needs glasses. Before I could answer, a window above flew open. A sharp voice barked, Croft, keep strangers off my bulbs. Croft shouted back, Inspection, Mr. Grieve. The window slammed. I made a slow circuit. No blood, no body. Just the fountain cherub with a cracked arm and an attitude. Then near the base, caught under a stone edge, I found a thin scrap of green leather. Same texture as the glove. I pocketed it. Ever see this cufflink? I asked, showing him the one Miss Quentin had brought. Silver RG engraving. He gave it a glance that lasted too long. Never. Sure of that. He wiped his palms on his trousers. You cops think everyone's lying. I'm not a cop, I said, and that worried him more than it should have. A voice piped behind me. Mister. It was a delivery boy, newspaper bag over his shoulder, watching from the alley gate. You looking for what happened last night? Maybe. What did happen? He stepped closer. I saw somebody drag a bundle toward the hedge. Tall guy, dark coat. Sounded like metal scraping stone. Then he left through the back gate to the parking lot. You tell the police? He shook his head. Didn't know it was important till the lady started asking questions this morning. I handed him $1. If you remember anything else, call this number. I scribbled Wolfe's line on a card. The man who answers eats murders for breakfast. He grinned. You mean the fat detective? The very one, I said. Don't feed him gossip until he asks for it. As I left, a black sedan idled across the street. The driver's hat brim hid his face. When our eyes met, the car eased away without a sound. License plates clean, too clean. Somebody cared who came snooping around their azaleas. Back at the brownstone, Fritz was lamenting untouched veal. Wolfe was in the office reading a monograph on South American orchids as though I'd been gone 5 minutes instead of risking burial. I dropped the scrap of leather on his desk. Confirms automotive oil, I said, and a shy superintendent. He leaned forward, sniffed. Naphtha residue. Someone handled machinery recently. Did you note the courtyard dimensions? 30 by 40 feet, 3 exits, 1 cherub missing an arm. Symbolic, he muttered. A mutilated innocence. Phooey. He looked at me. You were observed? By a sedan with uncooperative plates. Excellent. It means they doubt your affiliation with law enforcement. You are bait. I always wanted a hobby, I said. What's next? Sit in the hedge with a fishing line. He ignored that. Bring me the directory for garden flats. Any tenant or employee with the initials RG? None, according to Croft. He swore ignorance. Croft's ignorance, Wolfe said, is his most credible trait. We shall hear from Kramer shortly. As if on cue, the phone rang. Wolfe answered. Good day, Inspector. Yes, of course she came here. If you prefer to fumble in mud, continue without me. But when you find the corpse, kindly remember that my azaleas bloom only in spring. He hung up and poured himself a glass of beer. Kramer will arrive in 10 minutes, he said. Prepare him a chair and an outlet for indignation. Do I fetch the brass band too? Unnecessary. His trumpet suffices. I opened the windows to let the damp air out. You think there's really a body? There must be. No one threatens horticulturists for lost gloves. The corpse is the unseen center, and we orbit it until revelation. He took a sip. Archie, what did the boy say of sound? Metal scraping stone. Precisely. The dragging of a body wrapped in something metallic. Perhaps a garden frame, perhaps a wheelbarrow. Did you notice tire marks? Just mud churned under the hedge. He nodded. Then the tool was removed. Whoever returned for cleanup lacked time. Miss Quentin's visitor, maybe? Or someone tidying for her. Wolfe's mouth tightened. She omitted something significant, that I'm sure. The bell buzzed. I checked the glass. Kramer, hat low, face storm-colored. I opened the door. He came in like a weather front. All right, Wolfe. What's the stunt this time? I get a call saying you've got a missing corpse. That about right? Approximately, Wolfe said. Though not missing. Merely misplaced. Kramer snorted. You've been hiding bodies in flower pots again. I lack the energy, Wolfe replied. Kindly sit. Archie will recount the essentials while you refrain from rhetoric. I gave the short version. Woman, glove, cufflink, phone threat, courtyard. Kramer took notes between sighs. So maybe a prank, he said. Maybe she lost a glove and her nerve. Then why the call warning me away? Wolfe asked. Criminals rarely prank strangers without reason. Kramer frowned. You got proof a crime happened? Not yet, Wolfe said. But evidence of concealment is evidence enough. You will dispatch men to garden flats and dig near the azaleas. Do so discreetly. I dislike publicity. Discreet my eye, Kramer muttered, standing. If there's nothing there, I'll send you the bill for the gardeners. Accepted, Wolfe said, payable in humility. Kramer grunted and left without slamming the door, his idea of restraint. Wolfe looked at me. Archie, we dine. Afterward we shall learn whether azaleas conceal blossoms or bones. Same difference, I said. Either way, something's planted. He almost smiled. Quite. And he reached for the beer, sealing the conversation with foam instead of applause. Kramer hadn't even cleared the stoop when Wolfe's hand reached for the bell pull. Fritz appeared instantly, expression solemn, tray balanced like a sacred offering. Wolfe gestured for the beer, lifted the glass, and took a thoughtful sip. I was still half standing near the door when he said, "Archie, sit down. We must prepare for the consequences of competence." I sat. "You mean Kramer's digging, or the part where someone decides to stop us from enjoying it?" "Both." He studied the foam rim as if the pattern contained Morse code. "Kramer will confirm a corpse before the evening meal. When he does, our caller will know their warning failed. They will escalate." "By which you mean," I said, "another phone call, or maybe they drop off an orchid laced with arsenic." "Or they attempt to silence our client," Wolfe said quietly. "And if they fail, they may seek to discredit me." The phone on my desk buzzed once, neatly on cue. I grabbed it. A woman's voice, breathless, said, "Mr. Goodwin, it's Iris Quentin. There are police everywhere in the courtyard. They're digging. Oh, God, they've found something." The line wavered with static and panic. Then, "He's coming up the stairs." "Who?" I demanded. But the line clicked dead. Wolfe didn't move, but his eyes opened like shutters. "That," he said, "was not Kramer." "I'll get a cab," I said, already on my feet. He sighed, which for him was agreement. "Take Saul Panzer. You will require eyes." I called Saul, who was 3 blocks away. Within 5 minutes we were heading uptown through the thinning rain. Saul didn't ask much. He knew my tone. When we reached Garden Flats, the courtyard was cordoned off with yellow tape, and 2 uniforms were holding back tenants with curiosity stronger than good sense. Kramer was there, trench coat wet, face red enough to light the street. He saw me and barked, "Tell Wolfe he's a damn prophet. We dug up a man under those azaleas. Shot once in the chest, maybe 24 hours dead." "Identified?" "Not yet. No wallet, no papers. But there's a monogram on his shirt, RG. He watched me for reaction. I kept mine filed under neutral. "Our client's initials on his cufflink," I said. "That could make her popular." "Where is she?" he snapped. "I was hoping you'd tell me." "She called Wolfe a few minutes ago, sounded scared." Kramer swore and turned toward one of his men. "Check the tenants. Miss Quentin, 2E. Now." Saul and I took the stairs. The hallway smelled of varnish and nervous cooking. Miss Quentin's door stood ajar. I knocked once and pushed it open. The sitting room was a picture of polite disorder, a chair overturned, purse on the floor, phone dangling from its cord. "No Miss Quentin." Saul examined the lock. "Forced from outside," he said. "Someone came in with purpose." I went to the window overlooking the courtyard. Cops moved below, flashlights sweeping the wet ground. "If she's not here," I said, "maybe she's down there, with them. Or she's with whoever she called he," Saul added. He pointed at the desk. A single page lay there, torn from a notebook. On it, in quick, slanted writing, "Tell Mr. Wolfe I was wrong about what I saw. It wasn't a man at all." I stared at it. "That's not frightened handwriting. That's somebody buying time." Saul pocketed the note in a wax sleeve. "You want to tell Kramer?" "Not yet. Wolfe gets first dibs." We left without ceremony. The sedan was back at the corner, same one as before, same unhelpful plates. Saul walked to it, wrote the number in his head even if none was visible. He's that way. The driver's window cracked open 2 inches, then closed again. "Friendly neighborhood watcher," Saul muttered. Back in the cab, I called Wolfe. "Body confirmed. Male, initials RG. Quentin's apartment wrecked. She's gone. Left a note saying she was wrong." He made a low sound that might have been disgust or thought digestion. "Predictable. Bring the note, and Mr. Panzer." When we arrived, Wolfe was in his chair, eyes closed, fingertips touching. Fritz hovered with towels for our coats. Saul handed over the note. Wolfe read it once, twice, then set it beside the cufflink and glove scrap, forming a neat little gallery of misery. "She has been removed," he said. "Kidnapped?" I asked. "Possibly. Or persuaded to flee. Both serve our adversary." Kramer's voice thundered from the hall before Fritz could announce him. "Wolfe, your lady client's missing, and I've got a corpse named Raymond Grieve." The musician. "Downstairs." Wolfe opened one eye. "Indeed. Then Mrs. Grieve teaches painting and widowhood concurrently." Kramer slammed his hat on the desk. "She claims her husband went out last night to meet someone in the courtyard. Guess who? Miss Quentin." I whistled softly. "That's tidy. She calls us this morning pretending surprise, leaves a glove that belonged to her date, and now she's vanished." "She's more than tidy," Wolfe said. "She is deliberate. Mr. Grieve's cufflink at the scene, his body buried in the garden, and a staged witness to supply panic. Efficient, but not immaculate." Kramer jabbed a finger. "If you're implying she framed somebody, you'd better make it good. She's the only one with motive. Maybe he was blackmailing her." Wolfe waved him down. "Inspector, you are welcome to that hypothesis until I replace it. In the meantime, Archie, Saul, obtain all telephone records for Miss Quentin and the Grieves. Focus on calls after 8 last night." Kramer scowled. "You think I can just hand you—" "I think," Wolfe said, "you can permit Mr. Panzer to share information discreetly. He's less obstructive than your subordinates." Kramer muttered something anatomically impossible and left, slamming the door this time. Wolfe let the silence settle. Saul said, "You think Quentin's innocent?" Wolfe's eyes half closed. "I think she's the second act, not the prologue. Whoever phoned this office feared discovery, not accusation. Find the caller, and we find the motive." I said, assuming she's alive to confirm it. He opened both eyes now. "Then we shall confirm it ourselves. Archie, you and Mr. Panzer will revisit the garden flats at dawn. Observe without interference. If our observer in the sedan reappears, engage him discreetly. And if Miss Quentin reappears, escort her here before Kramer does." He leaned back. "Fritz, my dinner." That was the dismissal signal. Saul gave me a look that said he'd be awake till sunrise. I stayed until Wolfe finished eating, silence broken only by the sound of silverware and logic chewing its cud. When he finally set his fork down, he said, "Archie, there will be 2 truths by morning. One under soil, the other still walking. Bring me both." That was Wolfe's way of saying good night, and mine of realizing the next move would be played on wet pavement under someone's window. The rain hadn't quit when Saul and I stepped out of the brownstone before dawn. It hung in the air like a promise nobody intended to keep. The cab smelled of wet upholstery and impatience. Saul rode quiet, eyes half closed, which didn't mean he was tired. He was filing mental photographs. The garden flats looked different under weak street lamps. Police tape still fluttered at the gate, but the uniforms were gone. Only one cruiser lingered down the block, engine idling. We walked through the alley behind the buildings, boots sinking into soft mud. The hedge where Graves' body had been buried stood like a row of guilty witnesses, and fresh dirt covered the patch. Someone had smoothed it with more care than the city ever gives its sidewalks. Saul crouched near the wall. Footprints, 2 sets, one large, one small. Heavier weight on the left heel. "That's your man from the sedan." "Friendly guy," I said. "He's getting to be a regular." We worked around to the back gate. A padlock hung there, new and shiny. Saul tapped it. "Installed overnight. Kramer's doing?" Maybe, I said, or somebody who wants privacy. He moved closer to the hedge, sniffing like a bloodhound. Gasoline. Faint. Someone started to burn something. Evidence or nerves? He looked up at me. Both, probably. A window above us creaked open. Mrs. Grieve leaned out, hair pinned back, face chalky in the half-light. "Who's there?" "Goodwin," I said. "Private inquiry on behalf of Nero Wolfe. You might remember him from the newspapers, the man Kramer loves to hate." Her eyes flicked between us and the courtyard below. "I've told the police everything." "That must have been exhausting," I said. "We only want to confirm a detail. Your husband's meeting last night. Did Miss Quentin arrange it?" Her mouth tightened. "I don't know. He said he had to see her about a lesson. Music, he claimed. At night, under rain." She shrugged, but her shoulders trembled. "He was restless lately. Secretive." Saul said softly, "You didn't like her." She hesitated. "Mr. Grieve was a weak man. She, Miss Quentin, knew how to make weakness sound like charm. If you're implying jealousy, you're wasting time. I didn't kill him, and I didn't bury him." "Appreciated," I said. "If you remember any visitor in the building yesterday, call the brownstone. The line's always open." She closed the window without goodbye. Saul muttered, "There's your temperament cue. She's hiding fear, not anger." "Fear of what?" "Being next." We cut through the alley to the front street. The black sedan had returned, parked farther down this time as if discretion came with practice. I tapped the side of our cab, signaling the driver to start. Saul kept his eyes on the mirror. When we pulled out, the sedan did too, staying 3 cars behind. We didn't talk. I let Saul direct the tailing until he said, "Turn east." The cab veered into a side street lined with shuttered shops. At the corner, he said, "Now stop." The sedan slowed but didn't halt. Saul stepped out, walked straight toward it, and the driver accelerated. Tires hissed on wet pavement, turning the corner fast enough to splash a wall. I joined Saul. He crouched, picked up a small square of torn paper from the gutter. Dropped when he pulled off. It was part of a delivery receipt from a florist on Madison Avenue. A faint smear of oil crossed the corner. "Flowers for who?" I asked. "Orchids, maybe," he said dryly. "We'll ask the store." It was 8 minutes and a cab fare later when we reached the florist, a small shop just opening, woman behind the counter sorting stems. The air smelled of wet petals and ammonia. I flashed a grin. "Morning? I'm looking for the gentleman who ordered yesterday's delivery to the garden flats. Might have left this." I laid the scrap down. She examined it, then nodded. "Oh, yes. Evening order just before closing. 2 white orchids. Special wrapping. Paid cash." "Did he give a name?" She frowned. "No, but he mentioned the recipient. Said they were for Miss Quentin. Apartment 2E. Saul asked, "What time?" "About 8:30. "Who delivered them?" "I did," she said. We were short on boys. "See her?" She signed the slip herself. Looked upset. I remember because she asked if I thought orchids could wilt overnight without water. Saul and I exchanged a glance. "Anything else?" The woman hesitated. The man waited outside in a car. Black sedan, I think. He smoked constantly. We thanked her and stepped out. Saul said, "That clinches it. Our driver's the messenger, same one who called the brownstone." "And Miss Quentin knew him," I said. "Knew enough to let him watch her get flowers. Or to make it look like she did." I called Wolfe from a payphone. He answered on the first ring. "Report," he said. "She received orchids last night, courtesy of our sedan friend. Delivered in person by the florist. Cash order, no name. Grieve met her that same hour. Result, dead man under azaleas." "Orchids," Wolfe repeated softly. "A message tailored for me. I despise melodrama." Saul motioned for the receiver. I held it out. "We're being watched again," he said into the phone. "Corner of Madison and 45th. Same car." "Do nothing," Wolfe said. "Archie will return alone. Mr. Panzer, shadow the vehicle to its nest and report discreetly." Saul nodded, hung up, and melted into the crowd like he'd never existed. I headed back toward the brownstone. The walk took longer than the cab ride had, mostly because every sound behind me felt personal. Twice I checked reflections in shop windows. Nothing. By the time I reached Wolfe's door, I was half convinced I'd imagined the sedan. Inside, Wolfe was pacing, an event rare enough to charge admission. "Our adversary," he said, "is dramatizing orchids while bodies rot. An aesthetic criminal, detestable." Kramer called yet? He telephoned to gloat. The bullet in Greaves' chest came from a .32 automatic, no weapon recovered. He believes Miss Quentin shot him in a fit of romance. "That's tidy," they said. "Too tidy." "You think she's alive?" "Indubitably. If she were dead, the killer would not bother to menace me." Lowered himself into the chair with the grace of a descending mountain. "Archie, the orchids interest me more than the glove. Flowers communicate intention. A murderer sending orchids to his witness. Absurd, unless the witness was part of the plot." "You think she's his partner?" "Or his creation," Wolfe said. "She may have staged her own disappearance with assistance. The note you recovered, its diction was contrived, as if rehearsed. Then the partner is our phone voice." He nodded once. "You will visit the florist again this afternoon. Retrieve the discarded wrapping. If fingerprints remain, they may illuminate our actor. And Kramer. He will learn from his own blunders. Let him." Fritz appeared with breakfast, and the smell of coffee fought the rain. Wolfe's mood softened marginally. "We will soon be visited, Archie. Either by Kramer with reproach or by our anonymous florist patron. In either case, I prefer to be digesting." I poured myself coffee. "You expecting him to walk in?" "He will come in directly. Vanity demands an audience." A soft rap on the door proved him right faster than prophecy should. Fritz reappeared, looking uncertain. "A messenger, sir. He insists it is personal." "Admit him," Wolfe said. The man who entered wasn't the florist driver. He was lean, dark-suited, carrying a narrow box bound with twine. His eyes avoided mine, focusing on Wolfe. "Delivery," he said flatly. Wolfe's tone was silk dipped in acid. "For whom?" "For Mr. Wolfe. Signature required." I signed. The man placed the box on the desk and left without looking back. The door clicked behind him. I started to speak, but Wolfe raised a hand. No sudden movements. He examined the box, sniffed near the twine, then nodded. "Archie, cut the cord carefully." Inside were two things: another white orchid and a folded envelope. The flower lay on black velvet. I lifted the envelope and unfolded the single sheet, typed in clean capital letters. "She is safe. Do not interfere. The garden needs no more tending." Wolfe's mouth curved, not quite into a smile. "A horticultural warning," he said. "Elegant and inefficient. They've mistaken my patience for acquiescence." I slipped the note back into the box. "So what's our next move?" He leaned forward, eyes bright. "Now, Archie, we prune." Wolfe's fingers lingered on the edge of the velvet as though the orchid might confess. I waited, because interrupting him when he's communing with a flower is like heckling a priest mid-mass. The rain against the window had turned steady, each drop making the silence thicker. He finally looked up. "Archie, no sensible criminal sends orchids to my door. Our adversary is performing." "Then I hope the second act includes an encore," I said. "Otherwise, Kramer's going to close the curtain with Miss Quentin still missing." "She is not missing," Wolfe said. "She is withheld. The distinction is crucial." "Fine," I said. Who's doing the withholding? He didn't answer directly, just motioned toward the phone. Call Saul. He will have followed the sedan to its stable. When he reports, we'll know whether we're dealing with artisans or amateurs. I dialed. Saul's voice came low but clear. Warehouse on the East River, Pier 42. No lights inside, 2 men at the door. They took the car 15 minutes ago. Same license number we saw. No deliveries in or out since. Stay there, I said. Don't play hero until Wolfe gives the word. Wolfe had closed his eyes again. Pier 42, he murmured. Industrial, discreet, near water for disposal. Too competent for amateurs. Have him remain invisible. You will join him. That's touching, I said. But if they spot me, I won't float half as well as a body in an azalea bed. He ignored me. Take the note in the orchid box. If you encounter resistance, observe, do not engage. Bring me one verifiable link between that warehouse and our missing witness. Go. That was the end of negotiation. I pocketed the note, grabbed my coat, and was out the door. The cab driver who dropped me earlier gave me a look like he'd expected the sequel. He didn't talk, and neither did I, which made it the best partnership I'd had all day. Pier 42 smelled of rope, tar, and neglect. Saul waited in the shadow of a delivery truck, rain running off his hat brim. 2 inside, he whispered. Guards drunk or pretending. Light through the window at the back. We circled along the river fence, moving between rusted barrels. Through a grimy window, we saw a single bulb swinging from a wire. Beneath it, a desk, and beside the desk, the man who'd delivered Wolfe's box. He was on the phone, voice too low to catch. Another man stood behind him, tall, broad shoulders, hat pulled down. I leaned closer to the glass. The taller one turned, and even through the distortion, I recognized the jawline from the Garden Flats courtyard. The superintendent, Croft. Saul's eyebrows went up. Didn't take him for stage management material. Neither did I said. But he's got the set and props. The drunk guard at the door shuffled, and Saul tensed. I nodded toward the street. We'll call Kramer. Let him earn his pay. We ducked into a diner across from the pier. The coffee was black enough to be useful for fingerprints. I used the payphone. Kramer, I said when he answered, you've got a storage warehouse on 42nd holding more than garden supplies. Croft's there with a man who likes delivering orchids. Might want to bring your badge. He grunted. If this is another Wolfe hunch. It's a hunch with witnesses and coffee stains, I said. You'll thank me when it makes your morning edition. He hung up without promising. Gratitude. Saul and I watched the pier through the window. 20 minutes later, a pair of unmarked cars slid into place. Cops moved quietly, which for them was progress. We saw flashlights converge at the door, then muffled shouting. 2 figures emerged, hands raised. Croft and the delivery man, both looking like they'd expected a later performance. I exhaled. That's the end of Act 2. Saul didn't answer. His eyes were on a 3rd figure being led out. Slighter, wrapped in a coat too large. Miss Quentin. Her face was pale, but her posture wasn't frightened. It was calculated. Well, I said, our damsel rescues herself by walking straight into custody. Saul said, or she arranged the timing. I called Wolfe again. Kramer's got Croft, the messenger, and Miss Quentin. They're headed to headquarters. Wolfe's voice was smooth and unreadable. Excellent. Return at once. Kramer will bring her here before long. She will insist. When I reached the brownstone, the orchid box still sat on the desk where we'd left it. Wolfe had opened the envelope again, reading the typed message as if it might have grown new meaning under lamplight. He didn't look up when I entered. Croft and the messenger, he asked. In custody, I said. No shots, no corpses, no applause. And Miss Quentin, present, polished, not a hair out of place. Then, he said, Our play proceeds exactly as written. The bell rang before I could ask who wrote it. Fritz opened the door, ushering in Inspector Kramer, trailing rein and temperament. Behind him came Miss Quentin, guarded but outwardly calm. She looked straight at Wolfe. "You see? I told you it would come to this." Kramer threw his hat on the nearest chair. "She's all yours, Wolfe. She won't talk to my men, says she'll only speak in this mausoleum." Wolfe inclined his head. "Then we shall indulge her." He gestured to the red chair opposite his. She sat, folding her hands tightly. I stayed by the wall where I could see both faces. "Miss Quentin," Wolfe said, "your courage is notable if misdirected. Would you care to explain your collaboration with Mr. Croft?" Her lips parted, then closed again. "You think I worked with him?" "He kidnapped me." "Indeed. Yet you appear unbruised, and your note implied rehearsal. You expected rescue at the correct hour. You were, if I may borrow a phrase, stage-managed." Kramer growled. "Cut the poetry, Wolfe. She's either a victim or an accomplice." "She is both," Wolfe said, "but not in the sense you suppose. Miss Quentin, when you saw the figure in the courtyard, you recognized him." Her eyes flashed. "I saw movement. I wasn't sure." "You were sure enough to retrieve the glove and fabricate uncertainty," Wolfe said sharply. "Because the man was your lover, Mr. Grieve, and you needed to buy time to remove something from his apartment." Kramer stiffened. "Now hold on." "Silence," Wolfe snapped. "Miss Quentin, when Croft discovered your nocturnal meeting, he chose extortion over decency. He helped bury the body for a fee, but he could not resist doubling his profit by threatening exposure." Her voice dropped. "You can't prove any of that." "I can," Wolfe said. "The orchid box you arranged to send me. Its paper came from Croft's storehouse, a flourish meant to divert suspicion, to make me your witness instead of your pursuer. You wanted Kramer to catch him red-handed, as he did. Only you miscalculated the detail that interests me most." I leaned forward. "Which is?" Wolfe's eyes were cold. "The bullet. Croft could bury a man, but not shoot him with such precision. That required someone who knew Grieve intimately enough to stand close." Miss Quentin's hand trembled. "He tried to kill me," she said quickly. "He was angry. He said I was leaving him." "Pfui," Wolfe murmured. "You shot him, Miss Quentin, and Croft buried him for you. The delivery man posted threats to keep attention scattered. When the police unearthed the body, you meant to appear abducted, a tragic bystander." Kramer was already reaching for his cuffs, but Wolfe lifted a finger. "Not yet. She will sign a statement. She will mention the weapon discarded at the pier. Archie, accompany the inspector and retrieve it." Miss Quentin rose, face drained, voice thin. "He was cruel," she whispered. "He said he'd ruin me. I didn't mean to." Wolfe cut her off with a small motion. "I require confession, not contrition." Kramer clapped the cuffs. "You'll get both, Wolfe. Nice work. Remind me to stop doubting you." He herded her toward the door. When it closed, Wolfe leaned back, eyes shutting. "Archie, orchid scent as warnings are the height of vulgarity." "Agreed," I said, "but they make fine evidence." He grunted, reached for his beer, and finally allowed the smallest of smiles. "You see, Archie, even in horticulture, pruning reveals the bloom." The door hadn't even finished closing behind Kramer when Wolfe spoke again, eyes still shut. "Archie, inform Fritz that the kitchen is again safe for human discourse. Then bring the note, the cufflink, and the glove scrap. We're not quite done with horticulture." I did as told, setting the 3 items on his desk like offerings at an altar. He opened his eyes, studied them, and said, "Our facts are adequate for conviction, but not for comprehension." "You want meaning," I said. "The why behind the bullet." "Precisely. Miss Quentin acted under pressure, but not of love. The true motive is concealed among these trifles." He touched the cufflink with a fingertip. Silver, monogrammed, masculine, but polished with feminine care. The glove, woman's size, bespoke. The note, typed by steady hand, though the ribbon was old. He looked at me. "Archie, what do you see?" "3 expensive lies," I said, "and a client who thought she could choreograph her way out of homicide." "Indeed. But who supplied her the choreography?" He gestured for the phone. "Saul will answer." I dialed. Saul picked up on the first ring, voice crisp. "You saw the arrest?" "Front row seat," I said. "Wolfe wants the postscript." "Then tell him Croft's partner isn't talking," Saul said. "But there's more. The warehouse wasn't just a storage shed, back office full of carbon copies. Delivery manifests, flower orders, some addressed to law firms and galleries. One file had Miss Quentin's name on 6 orders, orchids, roses, even ferns, paid cash. Wolfe had leaned forward, absorbing every syllable. "Repeat that." Saul did. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. "Excellent. Bring those manifests here at once." He hung up, steepled his fingers, and stared at the objects again. "Archie, our Miss Quentin had a profession more botanical than romantic." "Flower smuggling?" I asked. He almost smiled. "Information smuggling. The flowers were pretexts. Deliveries concealing documents, perhaps art valuations. Mr. Greve, the musician, likely facilitated transport through cultural contacts. When he attempted extortion, she removed him." "That explains Croft's involvement," I said. "He knew the package's routes." "Precisely. The man's hands reeked of oil, not earth. He handled more than gardening tools." The bell rang. Fritz's polite announcement of Saul's efficiency. He entered, damp and expressionless, carrying a folder sealed with police tape. Wolfe gestured him to the desk. Saul said, "I liberated these from Kramer's chaos before they could be misfiled." Wolfe opened the folder, leafed through, then stopped at a page with faint pencil marks. "Observe, Archie. Repeated destination. M. Dorrance, Park East Galleries." "That name? Sounds like a painting dealer." "More than that," Wolfe murmured. "A conduit for contraband art during the occupation. He re-emerged recently with impeccable manners and a new address. If Miss Quentin's flowers concealed paperwork, Dorrance was her client. Then he'll be missing her bouquet service. Undoubtedly. You will visit him." I grimaced. "You know how much art dealers like my tie." "Endure their contempt. Ask about orchids. Mention Miss Quentin only if he feigns ignorance." "Should I bring a badge?" "Bring wit," Wolfe said. "It lasts longer." Saul offered to tag along, but Wolfe shook his head. "One observer suffices. Mr. Panzer, continue monitoring Kramer. He will discover Dorrance soon enough. I prefer foreknowledge." I took the file, grabbed my hat, and stepped into the drizzle again. Park East Galleries glowed like money pretending to be culture. Polished marble, discreet lighting, the sort of place that makes you whisper even when no one's listening. A tall man with silver hair and an accent smoothed by time greeted me. "May I assist you?" "You're Mr. Dorrance?" I asked. "I am he. I am representing a client with an interest in your floral arrangements, specifically orchids from garden flats." His eyelids didn't move, but the muscles behind them did. "You mistake me for a gardener, Mr. Goodwin," I said, "and I rarely mistake anyone twice." He gave a small laugh that didn't reach his throat. "I know the lady you mean. Miss Quentin was one of our patrons. Still is, technically. She's in custody." That drew a visible flinch. "Custody? For what?" "Planting things that didn't grow back." He studied me a long moment, then turned toward a painting, a landscape of Tuscany that probably hadn't seen Tuscany. "I warned her she was reckless," he said softly. "She thought herself indispensable." "To you?" "To the arrangement," he said. "You wouldn't understand." "Try me." He looked back. "Certain buyers prefer discretion. Miss Quentin handled introductions under the guise of flower deliveries. When her partner, this musician, grew jealous, He threatened exposure. She acted rashly. I regret it. Regret can be contagious, I said. You'd better make yours official before Kramer finds you. He smiled faintly. Inspector Kramer is unimaginative. He will need evidence, and you have none. Maybe not yet, I said. But we've got your name in her delivery book. His gaze sharpened. Then I suggest you misplace it. I left before he could decorate the suggestion. Outside, the rain had turned to sleet. I ducked into a cab and called Wolfe from the corner booth of a diner. He knows everything, I said, and he's too calm about it. Probably expects someone to tidy loose ends. Excellent, Wolfe said. Return at once. I anticipate an epilogue. When I reached the brownstone, the office was heavy with cigar smoke. Wolfe sat behind his desk, a second orchid box open beside the first. Inside lay another flower, identical, but with a bullet casing nestled among the petals. I stopped short. Special delivery. Fritz signed for it minutes ago, Wolfe said. The messenger fled. I leaned over the desk. The casing gleamed brass, stamped with PD. Manufacturer's mark, I said. Could be foreign. Indeed. Dorrance's gallery. Imports from Paris. I assume this is his reply to your visit. Then he's worried. No, Wolfe said. He's boasting. The casing symbolizes completion. He believes the evidence against him destroyed. Unfortunately for him, I retained a copy of the manifest before you departed. He reached into the drawer, pulled out a folded carbon sheet. Archie, telephone Kramer. Tell him to arrest Maurice Dorrance on suspicion of conspiracy to traffic, stolen art and accessory to murder. I dialed. Kramer grumbled, but he'd learned resistance was futile. When I hung up, Wolfe was already filling his beer glass. Miss Quentin will confess, he said. Dorrance will deny. Croft will barter. Between them, truth will surface like scum. Case closed, I said. He frowned. Cases do not close, Archie. They are pruned. I grinned. Then this garden's trimmed. He allowed himself a single nod. Indeed. And now, if you value your dinner, inform Fritz he may serve. I went to the door, paused. Wolfe, you ever think maybe you should plant something that doesn't grow bodies under it? He didn't open his eyes. No, he said. That would be dull. The phone rang again, sharp enough to cut the air. I picked it up. Kramer's voice came through, rough. Tell Wolfe his gardener's back at work. Dorrance is dead. 2 shots to the chest, same caliber as Grieve. Wolfe's eyes opened slowly. Archie, he said, our pruning was premature. And just like that, the rain outside found its echo inside the brownstone. Wolfe didn't move when I relayed Kramer's message, but the air around him seemed to. He stared at the telephone as though it had just confessed to conspiracy. The rain outside thickened into something like applause. I set the receiver down and waited. He said, Inspector Kramer possesses many virtues, but discretion is not one. Dorrance's death will travel faster than his warrant. Which means, I said, somebody cleaned up before we could thank them. Exactly. A murderer who removes an accomplice removes knowledge. Therefore, the hierarchy extends upward. Above an art dealer who imports paintings and bullets, I asked. Above and beside. Whoever arranged those shipments required Dorrance's social veneer, but not his vanity. Once exposed, he became cumbersome. Wolfe steepled his fingers. Archie, summon Mr. Panzer. I expect him to have heard the echo of those gunshots before Kramer did. I phoned Saul. He arrived in less than 20 minutes, trench coat glistening. Fritz took his hat like it was evidence. Saul's report was succinct. Kramer's men found Dorrance behind the gallery desk. No forced entry. Door locked from inside, but the window latch was broken. A revolver on the floor, wiped clean. 2 casings, both 32s. Suicide note, Wolfe asked. Typed, Saul said. No signature, no ribbon smudge. Wolfe grunted, a forger with manners. I poured Saul a coffee and myself a suspicion. Any witnesses? One, Saul said. Gallery assistant named Lenore Vale. Claimed she heard voices, male and female, arguing before the shots. That's new, I said. Miss Quentin's voice distinctive enough to recognize. Saul shrugged. Assistant said it was softer, older. She couldn't be sure. Wolfe's eyes opened a fraction wider. Older. That single word carried weight. He leaned back. Archie, telephone headquarters. Ask if Mrs. Grieve has been released. I dialed. Kramer himself answered, breathing like he'd sprinted up a flight of stairs. This is about Dorrance, don't... It's about Mrs. Grieve, I cut in. Is she still enjoying your hospitality? No, we cut her loose an hour ago. No motive, no means. Wrong on both, I said. Wolfe thinks she has both. Kramer's growl rattled the line. Tell him to think quieter. I hung up. Wolfe's eyes were shut again. Our widowed artist, he murmured. She loses her husband, her rival, and her supplier, all with convenient timing, yet she remains unscathed. Saul said, You think she shot Dorrance? I think she represents the reason he died, Wolfe said. Her art lessons, her husband's music, Miss Quentin's deliveries. These are strings on the same instrument. Mrs. Grieve may have tuned them. I looked at Saul. That's poetic. Means we knock on her door? Indeed, Wolfe said. But gently. I suspect she's prepared a performance. Saul and I headed out again. The storm hadn't relented. Water coursed along the gutters like impatient taxis. Garden Flats loomed darker than before, its courtyard sealed behind new police tape. We climbed to the second floor. Mrs. Grieve answered our knock wearing a robe that matched the wallpaper's fatigue. Her eyes were hollow but dry. You again, she said. Sorry, I told her. The night's young and your alibi's old. May we come in? She hesitated, then stepped aside. The room smelled of turpentine and wet roses. Canvases leaned against the walls, portraits half finished, faces blurred where eyes should have been. I took in the scene while Saul stayed by the door. Your gallery friend's dead, I said. She didn't react at first. Then her hand found the edge of a table. Dorrance? 2 bullets. Window open. No witnesses but an assistant with bad hearing. Her mouth twitched. Then it's finished. That depends on what it is, I said. According to Wolfe, you're one brushstroke away from a confession. She gave a thin smile. He flatters me. I only painted. Maybe so, I said. But you mixed the colors. Dorrance imported stolen art. Your husband provided storage under the guise of musical instruments. Miss Quentin delivered papers for payment. Croft buried mistakes. Everyone had a role. Her silence confirmed more than words. Saul moved closer, careful as a shadow. You knew about the affair, I went on. You knew Grave planned to blackmail Dorrance? You told Miss Quentin, didn't you? Promised her help. She turned to the window. He was cruel, she said. He would have ruined us both. And Dorrance? Why kill him? Her shoulders lifted and fell. He said he would tell the police everything. That I'd been part of it. He wanted protection. I gave him peace. Saul's hand moved to his pocket, ready for the phone. I shook my head. Why send the casing to Wolfe? That wasn't me, she said quickly. Someone else wants this to end cleanly. Meaning someone higher than Dorrance, I said. Who? She looked at me then, and I saw fear's reflection finally break through the lacquer. You wouldn't believe me. Try, I said. There was another buyer, she whispered. An American collector who financed the shipments. He used the name Partridge. Dorrance said he lived somewhere near the river, always met him at night. Saul nodded toward me. Warehouse? Maybe, I said. Pier 42's getting crowded. She took a step closer. I told Dorrance I couldn't keep lying. He said the man would kill him if he talked. I suppose he was right. Where can we find this Partridge? I asked. She closed her eyes. He said he kept an office above a shipping company, Hudson Exports. He owned it, I think, room 302. Saul had already started moving. I'll check it. No, I said. We go together. Wolfe will want this wrapped while it's still breathing. We left her standing in the doorway, face half lit by lightning. The cab ride took 10 minutes. Hudson Exports was 3 floors of anonymity, the kind of building no one remembers passing. The night guard was asleep or pretending to be. We climbed the stairs, water dripping from our coats, shoes squeaking like bad alibis. Room 302's door stood ajar. Inside, a desk lamp burned low, casting a circle of light over papers and a typewriter. No sign of life. Saul entered first, weapon drawn. The smell hit us instantly, cordite and expensive cologne. A man sat slumped in a chair behind the desk, hole neat in his temple, hands still on the typewriter. The paper in it read only one word: enough. Saul exhaled. Partridge. Looks like, I said, scanning the desk. The papers were invoices, all bearing Dorrance's gallery stamp. He was tying up the business. Or someone tied it for him, Saul said. He pointed to the window, open to the rain. The fire escape was slick, footprints fresh. I leaned out, catching movement on the alley floor, a figure darting toward a car. Hat, coat, unmistakable silhouette. Mrs. Grieve. The same robe showed beneath her coat hem. She's fast, I said. Not fast enough, Saul muttered, already moving. We pounded down the stairs and burst into the street as her car engine roared. I fired a warning shot into the air, not to hit, just to stall thought. She hesitated long enough for Saul to yank the door open and pull her out. Her face was white, eyes burning with something past panic. He deserved it, she gasped. They all did. I held her arm until she stopped shaking. You could have let justice handle it. There is no justice, she said. Only debts. The sirens came closer. I looked at Saul. Call Kramer. Tell him the garden's been fully weeded. He nodded and moved to the corner phone. I turned back to Mrs. Grieve, who had slumped against the wall, rain slicking her hair. She whispered something I barely caught. What was that? I asked. She looked up, lips curved in a broken smile. Tell Mr. Wolfe, she said, that some orchids bloom only once. Her eyes closed before the police lights turned the wet street blue. Kramer arrived in record time, which meant he must have been halfway through a sandwich when the call came. He stepped out of the squad car and took one look at Mrs. Grieve sitting on the curb, hands cuffed, eyes closed. His jaw worked once, then twice, like he was grinding moral fiber. You couldn't wait, he said to me. You had to play matinee hero. She volunteered for the role, I said. We just caught the curtain drop. He didn't answer. His men moved past us, sealed off the alley, and swarmed the office above. I watched as the lights flickered through the rain, painting the street in blue smears. Kramer came back after a few minutes, wet and irritated. Partridge's real name's Nathaniel Pike, he said. Collector, philanthropist, art smuggler. Take your pick. Dead, obviously. Shot with the same .32, I said. He frowned. You already knew that. Call it Wolfe's botanical instinct, I told him. You can smell repetition like fertilizer. Kramer muttered something unprintable and looked toward the cruiser where Mrs. Grieve was being guided inside. She says Pike was going to run. Claims she followed him, found him packing. He drew first. Did she happen to mention bringing a gun to the conversation? I asked. She says it was his gun. I gave him a look. Kramer, if we catalogued the number of times a dead man's gun magically turned itself around, we'd need another precinct. He sighed. Save it for Wolfe. I'm taking her in. Saul reappeared, coat dripping. You want me to trail the evidence chain? He asked quietly. No, I said. Stay close to Kramer's file room. Wolfe will want copies before the ink dries. Kramer waved his men toward the car. Tell your boss he can have his victory lap after arraignment. Wolfe doesn't lap, I said. He reclines. The car pulled away. Saul gave me a nod and vanished into the mist. I flagged a cab, knowing Wolfe would already have heard through whatever invisible vine connects his orchids to police frequencies. When I walked back into the brownstone, Fritz was waiting with a towel and the kind of sympathy reserved for men who return from the weather and bad company. In the office, Wolfe had shifted his chair slightly, his version of pacing. The orchids glowed faintly under the lamp, their white petals catching the light like gilt, pretending to be purity. He looked at me once. Alive. She's alive. For now. Pike, alias Partridge, is not. Kramer's treating it as another domestic misunderstanding with gunfire. Pfui, Wolfe said. Kramer understands domesticity no better than decency. He gestured toward the empty beer glass. I poured him another. So, I said, we've pruned the garden down to one surviving plant. He raised an eyebrow. An imperfect metaphor, but yes. Mrs. Grieve has removed every partner in her enterprise. Her husband, Dorrance, Pike. The motive is not protection, but possession. She wanted the operation for herself. She wanted what they possessed, he said. The paintings, the money, the independence to decide who thrived. She orchestrated the chain of murders with precision worthy of admiration if it were not revolting. I dropped into my chair. She's still claiming self-defense. She will until she is contradicted by evidence, he said, which we shall provide. Evidence like what? He turned to the small safe built into the wall and spun the dial. When it opened, he drew out the carbon manifest from Dorrance's folder. Observe this, he said. Each invoice lists Dorrance's gallery as sender, Pike as buyer, and a code in the margin, initials, perhaps, of intermediaries. I leaned over. RG, IG, MG could stand for anything. Or anyone, Wolfe said. R. Grieve, I. Grieve, M. Grieve. Husband, wife, and maiden name. I whistled low. You're saying the whole shipment scheme ran under their initials? Consciously or not, yes. Mrs. Grieve hid her identity in plain sight. These documents prove complicity from inception. I stared at the pages. How do we get them into Kramer's hands, without losing the point that she's the brains, not just the bookkeeper? By allowing him to think he discovered it, Wolfe said. You will deliver copies, feigning obedience, and mention that her initials amused me. He will dig, he will resent me, and he will confirm everything. I nodded. That's twisted enough to work. Good, Wolfe said. Now, Archie, there remains one inconsistency. The bullet casing sent to me from the second orchid box. It was manufactured abroad. PD for Paris Défense. None of the guns used by Croft or Mrs. Grieve fit that make. So there's another gun in play, I said, or another gardener, he murmured. The bell rang, punctual as irony. Fritz appeared with the look of a man who has learned to fear coincidences. Inspector Kramer, sir. Wolfe exhaled through his nose. Admit him. Kramer entered without removing his hat. You two are something else. Every time I think I've got the bouquet, you add another flower. Wolfe gestured toward a chair. Sit, if only to save my carpet. Kramer ignored the invitation. You were right about the Partridge name. Pike was his real handle, and you'll enjoy this. Ballistics says the bullet in his head didn't match the one that killed Grieve. Different gun, same caliber. Wolfe's brows twitched. Then Mrs. Grieve lies even about her lies. Or somebody framed her, Kramer said. A note was found on Pike's desk. Payment complete. The garden ends here. Same typewriter ribbon as the suicide note. I watched Wolfe's expression shift like a shadow. Then she did not act alone. The typist continues the script. Kramer scowled. Meaning what? Meaning someone still alive orchestrates the final arrangement. Whoever sent me the orchids continues pruning. Kramer sighed. If there's another killer, he's cleaned up well. Not entirely, Wolfe said. He left me a token, He reached into the drawer and produced the bullet casing. French manufacture. The same batch used by resistance smugglers during the war, stock later sold through art dealers. Dorrance's gallery, for instance. Kramer took it carefully. You're telling me this whole mess started with black market art and ended with bullets from the same source? Precisely. The garden has fed upon itself. Wolfe leaned back, eyes heavy. But the gardener remains. Kramer pocketed the casing. You'll hear from me when I've had enough of riddles. You already have, Wolfe said softly. You just refuse to taste them. Kramer left muttering. The door shut. Wolfe's eyes stayed closed. I said, You're not finished. No, he said. Miss Quentin's orchestration was competent, Mrs. Greaves' passion predictable, Pike's greed obvious, but the elegance of those orchids. Someone else selected them. Someone who knew I would see meaning in their choice. You think the florist's involved? He shook his head. No florist would risk such irony. This is someone who admires pattern, who watched from a distance. You've got a name? He looked at me then, the faintest gleam behind the fatigue. The assistant. Lenore Vale. I blinked. Dorrance's girl. The one who heard the voices? Indeed. The woman with selective hearing. She typed Dorrance's letters, handled his shipments, and undoubtedly prepared his final note. I sat back. So she's the one still pruning. Wolfe closed his eyes again. And she will call. People like her always do. They crave acknowledgement. The phone rang. Wolfe smiled without opening his eyes. Archie, answer. I did. A soft voice said, Mr. Goodwin, this is Miss Vale. I think we should talk. Alone. Wolfe murmured, Of course she does. I said into the receiver, When and where? Tonight, she said. At the gallery. I want to tell the truth. Fine, I said. I'll bring flowers. The line went dead. Wolfe's eyes opened. Archie, wear the brown suit. It will photograph well. Kramer will need a picture when the last petal falls. Wolfe hadn't moved an inch since the phone went down, but I could tell his brain was playing hopscotch. The orchids glowed under the lamplight, pale and self-satisfied. I slipped my notebook into my coat pocket and gave him the look that means, I'm not sure if this is suicide or reconnaissance. He opened his eyes. Miss Vale is not inviting conversation. She's inviting corroboration. She believes I've guessed her part and wishes to gauge the damage. She could also be planning to add another body to the exhibit, I said. Mine. That is why you will be armed, Wolfe said, and unencumbered by confidence. Thanks for the pep talk, I said. Any specific script you want me to read from? Ask questions of motive. Listen for self-congratulation. Vanity precedes confession. I nodded. And if she decides to demonstrate her punctuation with bullets? Dodge, he said simply. I left before his serenity infected me. The street had that oily gleam rain leaves on asphalt. The cab driver I flagged looked at me like he already regretted it, but he drove fast enough to keep me entertained. When we pulled up to the gallery, the front doors were unlocked, which was either hospitality or invitation to homicide. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of turpentine and old money. The lights were low except for a single lamp illuminating the main floor. Paintings hung on the walls like quiet witnesses. And there, by Dorrance's desk, stood Miss Vale, tall, calm, wearing black gloves that didn't suit the temperature. Mr. Goodwin, she said, I was afraid you wouldn't come. I've been known to disappoint women, I said, but curiosity gets the better of me. She smiled faintly. Curiosity is dangerous. That's what killed them all. I moved closer, keeping my right hand near my pocket. You mean Grieve, Dorrance, and Pike? She tilted her head. 3 gardeners who didn't understand the soil they were in. They cultivated greed and were surprised when it bloomed. That's pretty speech for a confession, I said. Her smile didn't falter. Do you think I killed them? I think you type fast, choose nice orchids, and enjoy rehearsing lines like that. Whether you fired the gun or just cued the orchestra, Wolfe's betting on you for the finale. She turned toward the desk, where an open folder waited. You see, Mr. Goodwin, every man in this case believed he was orchestrating something. Miss Quentin thought she could manipulate affection. Mrs. Grieve thought she could buy freedom. Pike believed he could buy culture. But it was always Dorrance who arranged it, and me who kept the accounts. And when the ledger stopped balancing, then the pruning began. The way she said it made my skin itch. So you started cutting. Her eyes flicked to me, calm, deliberate. I preserved order. Dorrance deserved the first bullet. He meant to sell me along with the paintings. Pike the second. He wanted to erase the trail. Mrs. Greve the third. She was willing to drag everyone into scandal if it gave her sympathy. I said evenly, that's a full bouquet of motives, but Kramer's got Mrs. Grieve on paper for the last one. She served her purpose, Miss Vale said. A convenient mask. You'll find her fingerprints on the weapon, naturally. I made sure of that. Something cold crawled up my spine. You're confessing, Miss Vale. Not yet. I'm explaining. She opened a drawer and took out a small revolver. Her voice didn't rise. This is explanation, too. I kept my tone mild. You're going to add me to the display? I don't enjoy killing, she said. But Wolfe will never understand the design if you tell him what I've said. He'll think it was greed or fear. It wasn't. It was symmetry. I edged closer, palms visible. Look, if you want to preserve your pattern, shooting me here ruins it. You'll have to clean up, hide another body, answer another question. That's asymmetry. She laughed softly. You're clever, Mr. Goodwin, but you underestimate perfectionism. I let my left hand drift toward the lamp cord. Maybe, but perfectionists hate surprises. I yanked the cord hard. The room went black. The gun went off once, loud, close, but wide. I dropped behind the desk, rolled, and kicked something soft. The revolver clattered on tile. My hand found it first, when the light snapped back. Thank you, fuse box miracle. She was standing still, breath coming fast, eyes bright but empty of panic. I aimed center mass. End of exhibition, I said. She didn't move. You think you've caught me. I think Wolfe will enjoy dissecting you verbally. She smiled again, just a faint tilt of the mouth. Then you should know he's already too late. Before I could ask what that meant, she reached into her coat and tossed something small onto the desk. A tiny glass vial rolled, glinting pale green. I recognized the smell an instant before it registered. Almond, bitter and final. Don't, I started, but she'd already pressed her fingers to her lips and swallowed something invisible. Her body went rigid, then loose, folding to the floor like a marionette cut from strings. The revolver stayed warm in my hand while I stared down at her. The vial had stopped rolling. I nudged it with a pencil. Cyanide. Quick, neat, unanswerable. I called Wolfe. He answered with a single word. Report. She beat you to the last act, I said. Poison, self-inflicted. She talked plenty first. Summarize. She admitted everything. Dorrance, Pike, Grieve, all her work. Said it was symmetry. Said you'd be too late. A pause, then a sigh, heavy enough to shift continents. She was right. Beauty without restraint. Phooey. What do I tell Kramer? The truth, Wolfe said. He won't believe it, but truth is indigestible. It stays with him. When I hung up, the sirens were already bouncing off the gallery walls again. I leaned against the desk and watched the orchids in the corner, white, immaculate, indifferent. Somewhere between the rain and the flashing lights, I decided Wolfe was wrong about one thing. The garden wasn't symmetrical. It was just human, messy, desperate, and alive enough to make you wish it weren't. I waited for Kramer to arrive. Revolver unloaded, statement rehearsed. thinking that for a bunch of flowers, orchids sure had a talent for murder. Kramer's entrance broke the spell like a door slammed in church. The gallery filled with uniforms and flashlights, the smell of wet wool crowding out the almond tang. He looked at Miss Vale's body, then at me, then at the revolver resting on the desk. "Every time I let you and Wolfe anywhere near a corpse," he said, "we end up needing a new filing cabinet." "I don't pick them," I told him. "They keep showing up in my schedule." He signaled his men to photograph everything. "Poison? Cyanide. Quick and dramatic. She might have rehearsed it." He crouched beside the body, shook his head, and stood again. "So she did the whole job, huh? 3 murders and 1 curtain call." That's the story she told before taking her final sip. "Then it's too neat," Kramer said flatly. "Real killers don't clean up this clean." "I'm with you," I said, "but you'll need a better suspect." She checked out in front of an audience. He squinted at me. "You believe she was running the whole thing?" "She believed it," I said. "And Wolfe thinks belief is usually fatal." Kramer barked a humorless laugh and rubbed his neck. "Tell your boss, if another corpse lands on my desk with his name in the margins, I'm getting him his own precinct." He turned to his men. "Wrap it up. Bag the gun, the vial, everything that looks smarter than I am." When they finished, the gallery felt hollow again, as if the echoes were waiting for someone to blame. I stayed until the body was carried out, the orchids drooping in the corner like exhausted witnesses. Outside, the storm had run down to a drizzle, and the air smelled faintly of something clean trying to start over. Back at the brownstone, Fritz opened the door before I could knock. "Mr. Wolfe is waiting," he said, in the same tone undertakers use when they tell you the casket's ready. Inside, the office lights were dim. Wolfe sat motionless, one hand resting on the orchid box, the other on his beer glass. I gave him the rundown, Vale's confession, the cyanide, Kramer's skepticism, without pausing for commentary. When I finished, he said quietly, "Kramer will file his report tonight. It will close the case, but not the matter." "She confessed," I said. "If that doesn't close it, what does?" He shook his head. "Confession is not truth. It is narrative, and she offered one too balanced, too aesthetic. She understood my methods well enough to counterfeit them." I frowned. "You're saying she lied?" "She lied by perfection," he said. "Real guilt stammers." I sat across from him. She could barely finish her sentence before swallowing poison. "That," he said, "was her proof." He reached into the desk drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Inside was the casing from the orchid box, the one marked PD. He placed it next to the new vial of poison, side by side on the blotter. "2 trophies," he said, "neither belonging to Miss Vale. She lacked the resources to procure them." I studied him. "Then who's still in the picture?" "The supplier," Wolfe said. "The one who imported both bullets and cyanide through Dorrance's channels. A chemist or dealer who supplied resistance materials years ago and now traffics in antiques and death." "You have a name?" "I have a suspicion. Look in the file labeled Correspondence, European. 5th drawer, right?" I pulled it open. Inside were letters, most typed, some handwritten. He pointed at one envelope stamped Marseille. "That," he said, "came 3 months ago from a Monsieur Duval, offering to sell rare hybrid orchids derived from military research. I declined, but Dorrance accepted a similar offer." "So Duval supplied both orchids and cyanide," I said. "That's tidy enough for your taste." He ignored the jab. "Tidy enough for pursuit? We will send a telegram, phrased as Miss Vale would have written it. You will dictate." I took out a pad. "And what's she saying from beyond the grave?" "That the final shipment has been secured and payment awaits confirmation," Wolfe said. "If Duval responds, we will have his location. If not, the silence will be instructive." He dictated precisely, each word clipped as though carved in stone. When it was done, I signed L. Vale at the bottom. He sealed the envelope and handed it to me. Telegraph office. Immediate transmission. I started for the door, but he stopped me. Archie. Yeah? Do not underestimate this man. He deals in extinction, not commerce. I nodded and left, though extinction was beginning to sound like the easier part of my job. The clerk at the telegraph office didn't blink at the name or message. Within 10 minutes, the wire was sent. I went back to the brownstone, hoping for coffee strong enough to resurrect optimism. Wolfe hadn't moved, but his eyes tracked me as I entered. Sent? He asked. Straight to Marseille. Good, then we wait. Kramer's not going to like that, I said. He thinks we're running posthumous errands for a dead killer. Kramer dislikes everything he cannot arrest, Wolfe said. Patience among them. We didn't have to wait long. Less than an hour later, the phone rang. Fritz answered, his voice wobbling. For Mr. Goodwin, he said, handing it over. The voice on the line was male, low, faintly accented. Mademoiselle Vale. I pitched mine cooler. She's indisposed. Who's calling? Ah, the man said. Then you are her associate. Tell her Duval received the message. The delivery is concluded. She may rest. Rest? I said. She already does. A small pause, then the click of disconnection. I turned to Wolfe. He took the bait, and he's keeping his grammar biblical. Wolfe's lips tightened. He speaks as one who knew her end, which means he watched or arranged it. He's not in Marseille. You think he's here in New York? Of course. No Frenchman phones with such clarity through our transatlantic static. The voice was local. I nodded. You want me to trace the call? He waved that off. Futile, but we can draw him nearer. A spider follows its own web. He reached for the phone, dialed a number and spoke to Kramer in the patient tone reserved for amateur gardeners. Inspector, prepare to intercept a visitor. A man calling himself Duval will arrive within the hour. He will come to confirm a death. Do not interfere until he leaves my door. Kramer must have argued because Wolfe's face hardened. You will observe only. This garden requires pruning by precision, not bludgeon. He hung up and looked at me. Lock the gate, leave the lights low, and keep your weapon ready. He will come. I moved to the window, peering through the blinds. The street was slick and quiet, the kind of night when footsteps carry farther than secrets. Wolfe sat back, calm as a mountain, the orchid box gleaming on his desk like a baited trap. We waited in silence. The rain began again, light and steady, tapping on the glass like a watch ticking toward the next move. The tapping at the glass wasn't rain anymore. It was too deliberate. 3 measured knocks, then silence. Wolfe's eyes slid open, unhurried, as if the sound had been penciled into his schedule. I moved to the door, hand close to my pocket, and waited for his nod. He gave it, barely, and I turned the handle. The man standing outside was tall, gray at the temples, raincoat immaculate despite the weather. His face was narrow, refined and expensive in the way that never makes a sound crossing carpets. When he spoke, his voice carried that careful European polish that can pass for sincerity in bad light. Good evening. I was told Miss Vale could be reached here. You were misinformed, I said. She's gone to seed. He blinked once, understanding. Ah, then I addressed Mr. Wolfe. I stepped aside. He's expecting you, which is more than most people get. He entered without hesitation. No umbrella, no hesitation at the threshold, like a man who'd already measured the room in his mind. Wolfe didn't stand, but his tone could have been a salute. Monsieur Duval. Duval inclined his head. I prefer discretion to ceremony. Then you've come to the wrong house, Wolfe said. Here, ceremony is survival. Sit. Duval took the red chair, ignoring the towel Fritz had placed for wet guests. He rested gloved hands on his knees, gaze steady. Miss Vale telegraphed me. She implied you were aware of our arrangement. I'm aware of everything she arranged, Wolfe said, including her own death. A small pause. Duval's smile was faint. Ah, so she finally fulfilled her design. Your design, perhaps. My dear Mr. Wolfe, he said, you attribute to me a power I neither sought nor possess. I merely facilitated commerce. Paintings change hands, artifacts move quietly. Miss Vale found the process beautiful. Beauty, Wolfe said, is never quiet. Duval's eyes shifted to me. And you are Mr. Goodwin, the chronicler, yes? I have read your accounts. You have an unfortunate talent for dramatization. I'll try to keep this one in prose, I said. He smiled, thin and unbothered. Good, because what happens now should not require poetry. Wolfe's fingers tapped once on the desk. Indeed. You will answer 3 questions. You will not lie because deceit is pointless when the truth already sits before you. First, did you supply Miss Vale with cyanide? No. Did you direct her to send orchids to this address? No. Did you kill Nathaniel Pike? That drew the first flicker. No, he said softer, but I ensured his silence. Wolfe's eyes narrowed. Through suggestion or substance? Both. Men like Pike understand hints more than commands. He was tired. I made him aware that surrender could be dignified. By which you mean death. Duval didn't deny it. Death is the most discreet solution. He knew the law would devour him. I simply opened a door. I said, and when Miss Vale followed him through it, she was sentimental. He folded his hands. She believed in balance, a foolish notion but admirable in devotion. Wolfe leaned forward, voice low. Monsieur Duval, you have confused devotion with delusion. You orchestrated a pattern of deaths under the guise of philosophy. For that, I might almost admire you. Duval's expression barely changed. Then we understand each other. Not yet, Wolfe said. One question remains. Why contact her after her death? You spoke to Mr. Goodwin pretending ignorance. That, Duval said, was courtesy. One final message for the dead. Confirmation that her performance had reached its end. Pfui, Wolfe muttered. You crave witnesses to your vanity. That's why you're here. Duval's gaze sharpened. And yet you invited me. I invite insects, Wolfe said, to understand infestation. The silence thickened, but it wasn't still. Duval shifted slightly, left hand brushing his coat. My own hand was already inside mine, fingers on the automatic. He saw it, stopped, and smiled again. Always prepared, Mr. Goodwin, he said. It's admirable. Comes from hanging around horticulturists, I said. Things tend to bite. Wolfe's voice cut through. You will remove your hand from your pocket, monsieur, and place whatever it conceals upon the desk. Duval hesitated, then withdrew a small revolver, silver, elegant, too expensive for common murder. He set it down lightly. It is empty, he said. I prefer to verify, Wolfe murmured. I reached forward, flipped the chamber. Empty. Honest, for a change. Honesty, Duval said, is my luxury. Wolfe studied him for a long moment, eyes like a microscope. You came here to confirm victory, not to kill, but vanity again betrays you. Kramer's men are stationed outside. When you leave, they will escort you to a less flattering chair. Duval smiled faintly. And if I do not leave? Then you will remain as exhibit, Wolfe said, in a case of your own cultivation. The Frenchman's composure cracked just enough to show steel beneath. You think you can hold me? I think, Wolfe said, you've already detained yourself. The knock came precisely then. Kramer's rhythm, solid and unamused. I opened the door. Your cue, Inspector? Kramer entered with 2 detectives, eyes taking in Duval, the gun, and the expression that passes for guilt in the well-bred. You again, he said to me. You could start your own morgue. I'd charge admission, I said. Meet the gardener. Wolfe gestured lazily. Monsieur Duval, also known as Louis Denard, former curator, former chemist, current purveyor of artistic extinction. Kramer's brows climbed. You've got proof? In his pocket, Wolfe said. Inside a cigarette case, you'll find an ampule identical to the one Miss Vale used. Cyanide, sealed for convenience, and a key tag from Hudson Exports. Room 302, Mr. Pike's office. Kramer moved, swift and certain. He retrieved the items, held them up. You never fail to ruin my appetite, Wolfe. Then I've contributed to public health, Wolfe said. Duval didn't resist when the cuffs clicked. It was inevitable, he said softly. Men like me always finish where we began, in confinement. Don't flatter yourself, Kramer said. You'll finish on paper. They took him out, the rain swallowing his silhouette. The door closed. Wolfe exhaled, long and deliberate, as if expelling the scent of corruption. Archie, he said, fetch me a fresh beer. This garden is finally weeded. I handed him the glass. You sure? Every time you say that, another seed pops up. He took a slow sip, eyes half shut. There will always be weeds. But for tonight, the soil rests. I looked at the empty orchid box, the pale petals beginning to curl at the edges. Funny, I said. They don't look evil. No, Wolfe said. Neither do men. The room settled into its usual quiet. Outside, the rain slackened, washing away footprints that deserved forgetting. I turned off the lamp, leaving Wolfe in silhouette against his orchids. They gleamed faintly in the half-light, pure, indifferent, and still very much alive. The morning didn't bring sunlight so much as a grey truce. Rain clouds had thinned to a damp haze, and the brownstone smelled of wet streets and Fritz's coffee. Civilization's apology for the night before. I sat at my desk sorting papers that didn't need sorting. Wolfe hadn't said much since Duval's exit, which usually means the thinking part's over and the phrasing part's begun. He was dictating a letter to the orchid supplier in Brooklyn when the phone rang. I answered. Goodwin, residents of deductive horticulture. Kramer's voice came through, gravel wrapped in fatigue. Your Frenchman sang half the night. He's sticking to Wolfe's version, though he adds a few creative verses. You can tell your boss he wins again. I covered the receiver. Compliments from the precinct, boss. Wolfe waved a hand. Inform the inspector that victory, as always, belongs to logic. I relayed the line. Kramer grunted. Yeah, well, logic just turned up another surprise. Forensics found traces of female fingerprints on Duval's ampules. Not Vale's. A different set. That interest you? I asked. It should interest him, Kramer said. They match Mrs. Grieve. I froze, glancing toward Wolfe. You sure of that? Positive. She handled the stuff before she was arrested. Maybe helping prep the poison Vale used. Thought I'd share the headache. He hung up before I could thank him for it. I turned back to Wolfe. Kramer's got fresh fruit. Mrs. Grieve's prints on Duval's cyanide vials. Wolfe's eyes didn't open. Expected. You knew? I suspected, he said. Mrs. Grieve was clever enough to cooperate, but not courageous enough to command. She supplied the poison at Duval's request. In her mind, that made her indispensable. To men like Duval, indispensability is merely postponement. She got lucky, I said. He didn't live long enough to tidy her up. She did not get lucky, Wolfe said. She played dead. When Kramer reported her suicide attempt en route to headquarters, it was not dramatics. It was a rehearsal. I imagine she will recover shortly and negotiate leniency. I poured myself coffee. So, after all the pruning, one weed survives. Let her, Wolfe murmured. Every garden needs proof that life persists. He leaned back, eyes closing, but the corners of his mouth hinted at thought not yet retired. I knew that look. "Something still bothers you," I said. "Miss Vale," he replied softly. She admired symmetry too much to act without audience. Her confession was genuine, but not complete. There was one name she avoided, one she feared. "Duval." "No. Me." I blinked. "You?" "She addressed me throughout her narrative," he said. "Her final line, according to you, was that I would be too late. That was not arrogance. It was acknowledgement. She meant for me to see the pattern's flaw. Her own." I shook my head. "You're losing me." Wolfe opened his eyes then, steady and calm. She saw beauty and control, but understood too late that control destroys beauty. The moment she killed Dorrance, her symmetry fractured. She swallowed poison to preserve it, an artist's vanity, nothing more. "You're giving her too much credit," I said. "She killed 3 people." "And herself," Wolfe said quietly, "which made 4. Even numbers comfort certain minds." I let that sit. The rain had stopped entirely now, leaving the window streaked with light. "So that's it then. Duval sings, Kramer files, Mrs. Grieve negotiates, and you cultivate." He gave a single nod. "A tidy summary, though I doubt Kramer will thank me for uprooting another foreign scandal from his jurisdiction." "He never does," I said. "But he'll eat better knowing it's over." Wolfe sighed, a long exhale that sounded almost human. "Over is a fragile word, Archie. Someone will always find profit in decay." "Maybe," I said. "But for now, you've got orchids and beer, and I've got paperwork that might pass for productivity." He lifted his glass, eyes half closed. "And civilization continues." I started stacking the files, the rhythm of it matching the quiet hum of Fritz in the kitchen. Outside, the streetcar bell clanged distantly, ordinary and alive. The city was already forgetting its corpses, as it always does. As I reached for the last folder, the one marked Vale, Lenore, I noticed a faint scent on the paper, something floral, light but stubborn. I raised it to my nose and smiled without meaning to. "Still smells like orchids," I said. Wolfe didn't open his eyes. "That's because, my dear Archie, they are the only flowers foolish enough to bloom after burial." He took a slow sip of beer, and the brownstone resumed its silence. The kind that means the case is closed, the bills will be paid, and the world, however absurd, is once again arranged to Nero Wolfe's satisfaction.